Teachers, when did karmic justice finally come to that one troublesome student? Had a kid that threw a lock at my head not get expelled because it just slipped out of her hand. She got expelled a few months later for bringing a weapon to school. A bigger lock? Freshman English. Busted a kid for plagiarism. He was furious and refused to drop the course. I gave him a second chance. And he continued to plagiarize. He was a slimy, smarmy kid who thought I was just a dumb, clueless TA. But jokes on him, so ended up failing the course 3 ways. Plagiarizing, exceeding absences, and failing to turn in a complete final. You can argue about 1 way to get an F. You can't argue about 3. Not a teacher. But one time when I was in kindergarten, a kid looked me straight in the eyes, bit himself on the wrist hard, and ran to the teacher and blamed me. That little. They sent me to the principal's office. My mom was called down. I got yelled at and cried. A week later, the kid did it again. And the teacher saw him do it. Felt so good to have the principal apologizing profusely to me, while that little head got a mouthful from his parents. I teach college students to be teachers. My first year doing this, I had a student who was always late, turned in the bare minimum of work, always had excuses. I told him he had to improve because if he did this on the job, he'd get fired. He kept coasting and the other profs let him get by. First teaching job, he got fired. I laughed in the privacy of my office, and I'm not sorry. I teach kindergarten, and I had a terrible child in my class last year. He liked to pull his desk away from the girl sitting across from him so her pencils and crayons would go falling on the floor. Finally, one day she got fed up and slammed her desk back into his. Unfortunately for him, his fingers happened to be there. I had to resist the urge to be like, that's what you get. But instead I just reminded him that that's why I said not to move his desk away from the rest of the table and sent him to the nurse. When I was younger, the teacher got tired of the kid who kept disrupting the class and she gave extra homework to everyone in the class except the troublesome kid and made all the students write thanks for the extra homework. Name. Somehow he stopped believing he was cool after that. Straight from the drill sergeant's playbook. That one. I was in pre-K in the early 80s at a private Catholic school. This one kid, Amy, would always bite the other kids. I don't remember exactly how it went down, but I guess one day I came home crying or had a really bad bite mark or something and my mom was ED. She took me straight to the superintendent, not the principal, and showed her what happened. The superintendent, a really old nun, did not put up with that. She called Amy into her office and bit the out of her arm. Amy started crying, but she never bit anyone again. Old nuns in the 80s were hardcore. Note, I am not saying what happened was right, just that it happened. Sister told me this story. Teacher kept a pack of Oreos behind the whiteboard, and when he would walk out of the class, students would jump in and grab some and eat them before he came back. Teacher noticed, so he put really hot sauce inside the Oreos and left on purpose. Came back and the kids who stole the cookies were left heavily breathing and sweating. Mine is a shorter one. There was a clique of the popular kids who were often jerks and acted out because hey, that's funny in high school. Our city had a living center for the mentally ill that also had a public swimming pool. And when we got to the swim module in gym, that was where we headed. Well, one day there's an extremely autistic 14-year-old at the pool, like barely functioning. And Chuckle decides that it'll be funny to sit there and growl at him aggressively, like a hostile dog. Because why the not? Autistic kid loses his. He freaks right out. The kid's handler figures out what happens, because someone discreetly tells her when she's wondering why her ward is losing his goddamn mind, and goes and talks to the teacher about it. Cool guy. Is banned from the center. He automatically fails the module. They choose to take it a step further, however, and decide that he instantly fails the gym course, losing the credits he needed to graduate, in addition to a lengthy suspension. One of my favorite things about being a teacher is when a child experiences natural consequences like tripping after they refuse to stop running or accidentally hitting themselves when they are trying to flail around to get away from you. My favorite I have ever witnessed though was from a preschooler. He used to army crawl under the lunch tables and jump off the furniture. One day in the lunchroom, he got ed for some unidentifiable reason. He stood rooted in one spot and screamed that he was never moving. He wanted to make a point, so he stomped as viciously as he could. He was wearing really flat-footed sandals on a hard floor and must have hit the ground with a perfectly level foot. His face was like a cartoon. His mouth made an immediate upside U and he screamed like that guy on SpongeBob who yells, "My leg." It just felt like justice to me. I was a camp counselor. And there was this kid who was so annoying and always tried to borrow money from other campers and not give it back. Eventually, none of the campers wanted to play with him, including his only friend at camp. They came to me and I had to tell him why his friend didn't want to play with him anymore. I encouraged him to stop scheming. He didn't learn. But I think social exclusion is enough of a punishment for him. When I was in middle school, not a teacher blah blah, I was riding my scooter home. And this kid who was a bully to me was making loud groans. Which he only does around me. Making fun of me being mildly autistic. He and his friends followed me making monkey noises and getting in my face. A man pulled out of his car and pinned him to the ground yelling at him. He was arm locked behind his back level of pinned down. Yelling at him, "Pick on me. Pick on me. Why aren't you picking on me, huh?" Sure, it was illegal for him to do that to the kid. I used to get in trouble in my 3rd grade a lot because I would lose my pencil in class. My teacher, Ms. Hodges, must have thought I was a moron. One day, after yet another lost pencil, I glance over at little Miss Anita closing her pencil box and glimpse my pencil in there. I screamed bloody murder at her until my teacher came over to yell at me for disrupting class. I accused Anita, who broke down crying and admitted it. Teacher took her out of class to deal with the situation. As far as I can tell, Anita was not punished. But she never stole any of my pencils again. I, however, did not get an apology from either lady. I think Ms. Hodges was said that she had one less reason to hate me. Looking back, I think Anita was poor and therefore got a pass. Had a student who would routinely get his cell phone out and wouldn't put it away when asked. Often left the room during class. Karmic justice. Failed the course. Dude, freshman year in high school, had a guy who had been a freshman for like 3 years. His mom calls him during class and is like, "What up, bitch?" And the teacher calmly tells him to put his phone up and not use vulgarity. "Man, you old ass. It's my bitch of a mom. Get out of me classroom, cow." That was 7 years ago. When she grew up and decided to become a teacher and had students who acted just like she did. Edit. This douchey kid grabbed a girl's purse and started rifling through it one day. Then he started yelling that she had a knife in her bag, trying to get her in trouble. I believe the sub said something along the lines of, "And that's why she has a knife," and gave the kid detention. After that he stayed away from the poor girl. Teacher's assistant for anatomy. This one student had an ego so large it could barely fit into room. However, this individual was very intelligent and often scored near perfect on exams. They wanted to go to med school. What made this person troublesome? Every detail was a small battle they had to win. They would bring articles how one small minute detail was incorrectly taught. 1 point off on an exam was met with highlighted notes from the book, PowerPoint, and articles on how they were correct. Mind you, the score on the exam was 99%. Karma justice. Did not get into medical school. One school emailed the pre-professional guidance counselor and told them how much of an ass this individual was during the interview. Not a teacher. But there was a group of little s in my freshman biology class that would constantly make fun of the teacher to the point of her leaving the class to regain her composure. This teacher was probably the best in the school. but massively overweight. A certain group of like 3 boys would non-stop harass her. They would leave chicken wings on her desk, candy bars, make noises when she walked by, disrespect her in general. One day she took a kid out in the hallway because he did something especially offensive. And one other of the boys said, wouldn't it be hilarious if she came back in crying? And that finally set me off. I went off on him. I was usually pretty quiet, but I couldn't take it. He resorted to insulting my dress. Clever, I know. So I said tough talk for someone wearing 80s mom jeans. He started bawling his eyes out in front of the class. I'll never forget it. Not a teacher, but shared a pay class with a girl that was kinda shy. I will call her K, and other girls that were bullies. The bullies were always calling her Barbie. She was really pretty and had blonde hair and was quiet, shy. K for most of the semester took a lot of ragging in silence. I think K was hoping that the bullies would get bored and leave her alone, but they didn't. One day in pay we were playing basketball and K managed to legally steal the ball from one of the bullies. The bully called K a bitch, and K, after all the bullying, finally snapped and said, better a bitch than a. The bully asked, what did you say? And K replied, you heard me. I was proud of her for standing up for herself like that. Shortly after that I had to move, so I don't know if the bullies continued to bully K or actually stopped. K, you go girl. Not a teacher, but in 3rd grade. There was this kid who nobody really liked because when he got in trouble, the whole class would get in trouble. I didn't like the kid. I thought he was annoying, and I never really learned anything but to not misbehave because I could also get in trouble like him. Anyway, one day he started giving the other kids in the class $1 bills to be friends with him. All of the boys were like, hell yeah, I'll be your friend for $1. Full stop. I, on the other hand, thought too highly of myself and refused. Then, the teacher stormed into the room, looked straight at him and demanded that he gives back the money. Apparently, he stole it from the teacher. All of the boys who he gave the money to got detention. The kid got expelled. Our minister had a brat child. One day he kicked at the minister and the man grabbed the kicking foot and the kid fell on the other leg and broke it. When the minister told the congregation the story, the whole church either laughed or clapped. He did start to parent better after that incident. Senior year I had a math class that was held in a science lab, showers, a wash station, etc. It was a class that had kids from grades 10-12 in it. One of the seniors was a big dude on the football team who really enjoyed giving to the smaller kids. He was the worst at what HS sports churn out. Anyhow, he liked to get this one skinny dude riled up every day by pretending to pull the emergency shower every time he walked by. Giggled like a smug doofus every time. One day I had enough and just went, hey Nelson, while he was under the shower. Waited for him to look me in the eyes. And pulled it. This is how it works. Boy was he red-faced and everything. Teacher came in and asked what happened. I said Nelson needed to clean up a little bit. Didn't get in any trouble. Just had to go get a mop from the janitor and clean up the water. I still enjoy that moment when I think about it. Volunteer Sunday school teacher here. I told the one really annoying class clown that one day he would need to listen up in class as it might do him some good. I told him that although it doesn't seem like it, most of his teachers, in school and out, want him to succeed in life. Well, he finally had a really good learning experience that due to his grades in school he was not allowed to participate in a class trip. That Sunday he told me that he was trying to do better because he didn't want to be left out again. So far, he is paying a whole lot more attention and actively participating. Had a math project where everyone had to write an algorithm and insert a few values on a table on Google Docs. Naturally, some kid decided to write a bunch of racist slurs. The next day, with our principal in the room, our teacher was able to prove that one student had faked the numbers without writing the algorithm even though all the numbers seemed close enough. The same kid confessed to writing all those dickish comments and got a lot of detention. It was a very liberal school. Wait. What? not a teacher, but in 2nd grade there was this really stupid kid in my class who would constantly disrupt class and be a butthead. One day he got the brilliant idea to stick a pair of scissors in an outlet. At the time I remember thinking, got what you deserved. Now I think to myself, gee, that guy's head and face were oddly shaped. I think he might have been autistic. I'm an awful person. Edit. Facial deformities aren't all that characteristic of autism. Though. Fetal alcohol. Downs. Williamson maybe. I try not to dwell on TI students because there might be some problems that they have no control over. Like family money etc. I do relish it when students email me to complain about their grades. Though. As an EFL teacher, when students write poor emails demanding higher grades, I just laugh at the multitude of errors in the emails they send. Of course my students earn the grades they receive. Unfortunately every class must be graded on a 3-0, 4-0, 3-0 curve. Unfortunately nothing. I teach preschool and most of my problem students either have some undiagnosed issue or a complete lack of consequences from the parents. Usually a bad combination of both. I don't want bad things to happen to them. What I'd like is for their justice to be getting the help they need. More than I as an untrained person making minimum wage can provide. Unfortunately that rarely happens. Because the parents here refuse to think something could be wrong with their angel. And I'm not allowed to imply otherwise. This thread is going to be full of jokes and I'm not a teacher but. Teacher but.